Hey guys, I just want to let you know that I'm now a certified spiritual life coach. If you resonate with the topics and lessons that my guests and I discuss on my podcast, and you feel that you could use some empowerment and direction in your journey of becoming who you truly are, consider booking a free discovery call with me on my website at kindlemccullough.com. And now on to the episode. Hey guys, I'm excited today. I have with me Elysia Sky. She contacted me and I checked her out and I love what she's all about. She wears a lot of hats. She's a author, she's an actor, she's a narrator, she's a coach. So yeah, Elysia, thanks for joining me.
Oh, thanks, Kendall. It's been so great to connect with you, get to know you a bit, even just today. And I'm looking forward to this conversation. We've picked out some pretty great things to talk about. So thanks for your help with that.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. I'm ready. I'm excited to dive in. Do you want to tell us more about yourself, kind of how you got to where you are now and just what you're into?
Sure. Well, truthfully, I want to give gratitude to my mother. And she raised me to be a very spiritually open-minded person, a curious person. And when I was a little girl and I wanted to go to theater school, I was very little, like younger than 5. She was like, let's do it. So she was always very encouraging that whatever I was dreaming about, it was possible. That doesn't mean that we had the money to do all those things, but in whatever ways we could, we made it possible. And I feel like that really grounded me into my adolescence and adulthood, that our resources are our resources. And when you think about the word resource, source being universe or God or whatever it is you want to call it, and then we resource, we call that energy in to create our life. I truly live by that. And going into my early 20s, I moved to Los Angeles to be a movie star. There's no other way to describe
dream.
it. To dream, right? To be a movie star. And I booked a couple of things. I got my Screen Actors Guild card, and I got a little frustrated with some of the roles I was going out for. People were casting me because I was really young, for like, hey, come be a cheerleader. And then I'd show up and, I look more like the evil queen. And it's just how I am, but I do have a kindness in my energy. So I would get called for those roles, but then I wouldn't book them. So I started to produce my own content. We didn't really call it content back then. It was like short films or sketches, right? So produce my own content to give myself more opportunities. And I didn't go to production school. I didn't go to film school. I did go to college and I studied psychology, which makes perfect sense considering where I've ended up now. But being on set so much, being on movie sets and TV show sets, I learned a lot about film production. I'm not that girl that would sit in my trailer and wait for someone to come and get me. I would be on set asking the director questions like, oh, that's a light meter. What does that do? Like, oh, I see how you're framing the shot. I was just always, again, very curious. So I learned a lot, and I connected and aligned with some great people who were in film school, who were studying. And so we just started making movies, little short movies and this and that. And then people started hiring me to produce their stuff. They're like, oh, you're really good at this. Will you produce my stuff? So I just kept saying yes to the opportunities that were showing up. And the acting opportunities were slowing down as I was saying more and more yeses to the production opportunities. And in that, I still felt this calling to quote unquote, be on a stage and share and teach and shine light and entertain. And so as you can imagine, fast forward with everything that I've experienced. And also, this is a big one, wanting passive income, because anyone who is an artist or a creative or an entertainer in any way, if you are, in my situation, if you're working full time all the time in someone else's office, which I did a lot as a producer, I worked for a lot of big companies. It was very draining to my energy to then have the creative capacity to do what I wanted to do. So I invested in real estate. I have a couple Airbnbs. I had some in LA. Now I have them in Nashville. So just having an income to support my creative life in addition to regular work was really critical on how I got to where I am now. We could go so deep into all of that, Kendall, but long story, just a little bit longer. Because I had a successful Airbnb business, a production company, I was officiating weddings on the weekends because I thought it was really fun. And it was like just part of a non-denominational ministry that I joined. And with that, the caveat is I'm Jewish, I'm Buddhist, I'm spiritual, I'm all the things. My husband is Catholic-ish. We're all the things, right? So if you believe in it, I probably believe in it too, as long as it's good, as long as it's kind, as long as it's compassionate, as long as we're equal and loved. So doing weddings was fun. So it was funny. I was on set and someone's like, "You've got the weirdest side hustle. Like all of us are like, driving Uber or like doing independent movies and you're off marrying people." I'm like, it's just fun. So when you connect the dots and do what you feel motivated and inspired to do, similar to how you started your podcast, really, I believe the universe conspires in our favor. So here I am as a podcast host, as an intuitive business coach, as a speaker, as an author, as all the things that you said, doing voiceover. They're all connected now that you know everything that I've done, right? I'm just doing my thing.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's awesome. What a journey. And you got in I'll say the entrepreneurial, like just going for it and putting your hat in a lot of different places and being so curious and just going for it. You said the evil, the role. I see like Maleficent. I could see you being like in that role. Of course, I mean, yeah, I see a lot of good in you, obviously, but not evil, but just the look. I can see it.
I love it, and I don't think I would look good as a blonde.
Right.
So let's keep it going.
Actually, funny enough, the last guest I had on was one of the first 30 Airbnb employees. So that's funny. And then you had your own Airbnb company or hustle.
How fun. I'll absolutely be listening to that.
Yeah, it was great. And he kind of, went on and had his own journey, and he has lots of different hats too. So a lot of similarities there. So I think that's great. Yeah. So I think some of our topics today are talking about fear and self-compassion and presence. And I'm sure that in your journey, there was a lot of dealing with that and overcoming that. And so how did you learn about these things and how to work with them through your journey?
Oh, thank you for asking that. I think that really applies to everyone who's listening or watching, because we all experience fear. It's a natural part of our brain, how our brain works. And of course, when the ego gets involved, fear is there to keep us safe, to keep us alive. So it's not always a bad thing, though I do try to focus on love instead of fear. I believe there's only two emotions, really. There's fear-based emotions and there's love-based emotions. And every day, in every moment, we're making a choice of which emotion is leading us to the conclusion of what it is we're creating, right? So are you making a fear-based choice or are you making a love-based choice? So when you look at, okay, well, what's under fear then? Okay, well, we have anger, resentment, jealousy, hatred, scarcity, lack, self-doubt, all that stuff. Then what's under love? All the opposite of that. Joy, elation, kindness, compassion, empathy, the desire for community, sensitivity, right? There's just so much that we can choose to be in any moment. And when we are self-aware enough, which is a mindfulness practice, we can pause and make a better choice. When I say better, I mean a loving choice versus a fear-based choice. So does that resonate before I continue?
Oh, yeah. I like the word elation. I haven't heard that one in a while. And yeah, I think it's a great word. But a joy is another one I think that's similar. But yeah, I love all those. I always think about like the fruits of the Spirit. I grew up Christian, so that's kind of where my mind goes to first. But yeah, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, self-control. So yeah. And, earlier before we started, we were talking about kind of the Course in Miracles, and it talks about fear versus love. And that's a big part of its core teachings.
It is. I love that you're reading the course, and you'd mentioned you read Disappearance of the Universe, and that book was a huge eye opener for me on, first of all, being introduced to A Course in Miracles. And if, for everyone listening, if you're not familiar, it's essentially a workbook, but it's a huge, huge teaching about forgiveness and love, and really dissolving the idea that all of this, when I say this, it's almost like air quotes, like this, that we are experiencing as reality is not the truth, that we are at home in love. We are perfect love. We are not separate from the energy of perfect love that you might refer to as God. And it's just a beautiful way to think and feel about your life. And it brings so much healing. So I'm a big, big fan of A Course in Miracles. It's not a religion. It's a philosophy. It's a teaching. Buddhism was never a religion. It's a philosophy. It's a teaching. So in alignment with that, I love it. So yeah, I learned a lot about fear and love and the ego and the spirit. And fear it can just cripple us. It can feel so heavy. Like sometimes it feels like it's gripping you almost from the inside out, and it's hard to move forward when we are in fear. And sometimes there's moments where we, I'll just say, have every reason to be fearful. There's currently, at the time we're recording this, wildfires in California, and most of them have been contained at this point or put out, but it's still really scary. And then there's arsonists that are copycatting and setting fires. So there's like true fear of, oh my gosh, I have to evacuate. That's a real fear. And that's where the ego kicks in to say, hey, please continue living, because as an ego, I can't survive without a body. But your spirit and your soul is like, we can totally survive without a body, right? So the ego kicks in to keep you alive. It has a purpose. But then we get to ask ourselves, who are we putting in charge when we are safe? Because when we realize in this moment, I am safe, right? You've evacuated, or your house isn't on fire. We're here listening on the internet, right? In this moment, I'm safe. So all these fears, all these worries, all these doubts, all the things I've been focusing on around, can I pay my bills? Does this person love me? Things that we are afraid of, because we're all just calling out for love, right, Kendall? We just want to be loved. We just want to be appreciated. So when we are in action, almost in opposition of that, like fear is so strong. But if anyone is afraid and they are acknowledging, yeah, there's fear going on, the fact that you're aware of it and that you want to shift it is already a huge step.
Right.
Because fear thrives, right? It thrives in the unconscious. So the moment that you bring it to light, that darkness fades away. You start calling your power back in. So just that first little mini step, or like a pre-step, is like, oh, I'm feeling fear. Just acknowledging it starts to lessen it.
Yeah.
And then when we ask ourselves, well, why does it, right? Like, why does it feel so strong? And, I love talking about science. I love spirituality, but I love science. So fear isn't just an emotion. It's actually a loop, like a pattern. Your brain is wired to keep you safe. So anytime you step into uncertainty or something that feels really unfamiliar, it sends signals to your brain, right? Stay where you are. Don't take that risk. Don't invest in that thing. Don't go all in on your show. Right? It's not trying to hurt you or harm you or keep you small. It's actually trying to protect you, like we talked about with the ego. But is it actually protecting you from danger? No, it's just protecting you from discomfort. And we have to have discomfort in order to grow, in order to shift that, right? What's been your experience with that?
Yeah. I think there was a lot of fear growing up. Well, there's a lot of shame, but it's all connected. I was bullied a lot. I was, I had very loving parents, but they were also pretty hard on me in some ways. So I had a lot of like limiting doubt, beliefs. And then that kind of spilled into my understanding of God as being this perfectionist and needing to meet this high standard that I couldn't. And then, I think that going to college, I stayed home, I stayed close, I stayed safe, in that way. And then I did go to grad school, and that was kind of a step. But then my fears really, really hit me. I had a lot of anxiety. I had this imposter syndrome. Everybody was really smart, like me. I wasn't unique or special anymore. I was just on the level of everyone else, and um, but I had trouble with procrastination, focus, and purpose. What did I really want to do? I had all these voices growing up of this is what you should be, or this is what you should do, or whatever, and they were really holding me back because I was accepting them and believing them, and I wasn't fully in my own power and what I truly desired, because I was in that fear and lack mentality. And that is spiritual awakening, which kind of broke through and helped me understand God as unconditional love, and and then break free from that lack. And had the dark night of the soul. There's a whole giant story I've told lots of times, but yeah, slowly coming
Yeah.
from fear to love over time, and connecting with myself and what am I passionate about? What is my purpose? What is my direction? And I went to grad school for psychology to be a counselor at first, and eventually dropped that, which was really fearful too, because it's like I spent all this time to do this. And, but really listening to myself and what is my path, and realizing it was close, but it was a little different. And then getting into coaching, and now I was trying to make coaching work. And, you start something new, and you're not getting a lot of response at first, and money, and is this right? And all the fear things kick back in. And just like when I started my podcast, all this fear of what people think, what if I say this, and the people I grew up with, and what will they think about if I talk about this? And so every time you take a new step into the unknown and a new step of growth, all that fear comes back in. But if you keep on, then you grow, and you realize that, like you said, fear is kind of an illusion. You think that you're in danger and all this thing, and maybe you will face danger, and some of those things will manifest, but it's never going to be like you thought. It's never going to be the end of the world, like you said.
Yeah, usually not. Ooh, I've heard some of your story before and listening to your show, but it's really cool to be here with you and to hear you talk about it that way. And when people are willing to move through the fear, I think one of the first steps is looking at it like the way you looked at it, right? Like identifying the root of it. And I don't necessarily believe we have to always understand the root cause in order to heal from something, because some people have some stuff
It's
that
so buried.
they'll never
Yeah.
know the root cause.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Or like, I think some root causes are like past life shit, or
Mm-hmm.
stuff in their childhood they just won't remember. So that's really cool how you talk about it. And I hear you on the imposter syndrome thing too. And do you know who Amanda Palmer is? She's from the Dresden Dolls, that band.
Oh,
She's not
I've heard of the
mainstream.
band, but I don't know who
Yeah.
she is.
So she did a TED Talk
Mm-hmm.
about asking, because she did a really successful Kickstarter a really long time ago, like when Kickstarter was really popular or first getting popular. And so she raised $1 million for her record, and she did it just by asking. And then she wrote a book called The Art of Asking, and then she did a TED Talk on it. And so if you look up Amanda Palmer, you go on YouTube, look up Amanda Palmer graduation speech. She did a commencement speech at the college she went to, and she talked about imposter syndrome. The way she talks about it, it finally resonated with me in a way that I've never heard anyone else talk about it. She refers to it as the fraud police, FRAUD, not frog. Some people think I'm saying frog. The fraud police.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, as like we become an adult, right? We graduate high school or college, we become an adult, and then like we're just given authority. And it's so crazy that like even we're given keys to drive a vehicle that like could kill someone.
Yeah.
Like we've just been
Yeah.
given authority, and that imposter syndrome doesn't really go away. So we think that the fraud police are out there. The fraud police are this invisible group of responsible adults who are going to show up at our doorstep at any point, even the middle of the night, and knock on the door and arrest us and be like, we're on to you. You're faking it. You're faking it until you make it. We're on to you. We know that you don't actually know what you're talking about fully, that you don't remember everything you ever learned, and we're going to arrest you and tell everyone, and you're going to be embarrassed, and you're going to be ashamed, and no one's ever going to buy from you, and you're going to die of starvation because you will never have money because you're a fraud, right? And it's like,
that's great.
It's so ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
We totally think that. Like when we're like, imposter syndrome. It's like
when am I gonna reach? What age am I gonna like feel like I'm an adult? That I'm gonna feel like I'm competent? That I'm have it all together? Like I'm just waiting for it, you know? And it's like, oh hey, everybody feels like this, even adults, and we're just all here faking it.
100%, right? I think she even tells a story of like a surgeon that she talked to. That's like the surgeon is like in there operating on someone, right? Like thinking about like, oh, did I lock my car? Right. And then it's like, oh my God, I'm inside someone's body. Who gave me permission to do this? You know, it's like those thoughts come through like, this is a big deal. So yeah, I don't know if it ever goes away. And I've heard, you know, from some of the most successful people who have the most amount of money in the whole world, like it kind of just doesn't go away, but we can feed on that energy. We can feed on that. And, you know, when you look at fear versus excitement, the true difference is you're breathing or not. So think about this, right? I don't really love roller coasters. Do you like roller coasters?
I do.
Okay, great. And I'm sure
I get it though. I get it.
In our audience. So the reason you like roller coasters is because you're being present and you're breathing. The reason I hate roller coasters, and I try to be better about this, is we're going up the track, right? Going up
Scariest part.
And in my head, I'm like, oh shit, right? It's over. It's over. It's over. And so the fear kicks in. So what do? I hold my breath because I think I'm about to die, even though I know I'm not going to die. I don't actually believe it, but I'm holding my breath. So then I'm tense. If we were on a roller coaster together, Kendall, and I looked over at you and you were sitting next to me, you would be taking it in, you'd be breathing, you'd be trying to see things you can't normally see from that high up or whatever the ride is about. And you're just breathing and enjoying. So I was on a roller coaster with my sister and I noticed she's just got her arms up and she's breathing and she's like, look over there. Wow, look at that. You can see the Magic Kingdom from over here, right? You know, and I realized it. Oh my gosh, she's breathing. That's the only difference, right? Fear and excitement cannot exist in the same moment because the second you start to breathe, you can really alchemize fear into excitement. And there's some of that excited energy, like if you're a speaker and you're about to walk on stage and you feel fear, just take a breath, turn it into excitement, right? If you're about to be on a podcast or you're about to lead a big meeting at work, or maybe you're about to quit your job, right? Things that there's a lot of fear there. You know, when women give birth, what do they need to do? Breathe, right? It's not just for your health and the baby. It's also to calm your mind down. There's so much power in the breath. But when we feel imposter syndrome or any other fear, the second we breathe and we start to calm down our nervous system and we feel better and we remember in this moment, I'm safe. And whether these people are wrong or not, they trust me. So I'm going to do the damn thing and I'll do the best that I can in this moment.
Yeah. I love the connections, the spirituality with the science and the somatic element. Everything does come back to the breath, really. Everything in life, all life is breathing. And if we're not breathing well, then we do get into the fear state, and then our mind starts racing and the thoughts, and we're not being present, and we're either, fight, flight, or freeze response. I remember back in actually undergrad, and I had this senior research project, and it was really big, and I had so much anxiety that I actually developed like a shake in my hand. And that's when I started going to counseling, and I learned meditation, and then breathing was a big part of that. And that helped me so much.
Yeah. Not all fear is created equal. When you're talking about being in college and having anxiety, just the rate at which kids today and young adults have anxiety it's unreal. It's off the charts. There's so much pressure. They put so much pressure on themselves. And, through, and I'm not anti-social media. I like social media, but through social media, there's so much comparison that goes on, and people are usually only showing the good stuff. So we don't actually have a baseline for adolescents and young adults to know how other kids are actually feeling about their success or their failure. So I hope that young people are listening to this and will just breathe and know that they'll survive. And in this moment, they're safe. And if you don't do great on a test, it doesn't mean you're not going to get the job that you want. And so many of us either didn't finish college or don't even use our degrees. So, I guess that's different if you're going into something very, very specific, if you want to be an astronaut or a physicist or a surgeon or a lawyer, right? But give yourself a break. It's going to be okay. And you're going to do the best you can. And if we always just do the best that we can, then we can go to sleep peacefully at the end of the night. And when we go, well, I could have done better. But the truth is, if you could have done it better, you would have. So please be kind to yourself. And I might be jumping ahead because we're going to talk about self-compassion later, but I'll just sneak it in here real quick because it's connected. But when we talk to ourselves with the same kind of love and compassion we would talk to a friend, it truly changes how we think and feel about our life, because we're the ones being so critical and beating ourselves down to the point where our body starts to physically react, like you just said, right? You developed a shake in your hand. Some people develop migraines from clenching their jaw, back pain. Like, you can look at the body and know exactly where you're holding your fear and anxiety and tension. And we can heal it, with or without medicine. We can truly heal most things in the body just by being kinder to ourselves, sending love and energy to those places, changing the way we think and feel about our life, choosing to breathe and lean into joy and love over fear, choosing excitement over fear, gamifying the shit out of everything. Like, are you going to pass this test? Let's see. Let's make it a game, right? And just take things so much less seriously. And my grandparents all lived to be pretty old. I'm so grateful that they did, except for maybe one. But he died in his 70s, but everyone else got to their 90s. One grandma even got to 100. And the key takeaway from talking to the elderly, which I highly recommend everyone do, is just find an old person and ask them everything. They all say stop taking everything so seriously. The only thing that matters is our relationships and our heart and how kind we were to people. And just because relationships matter doesn't mean we have to release our identity over it or obsess over it either. Just do your best, be kind. When I first moved to LA, I met Dick Clark, and a lot of young people might not know who he is now, but he's one of the most famous people in the world. And he was the one who also did the ball drop in Times Square for so many years, through most of the 1900s, right? So Dick Clark was a big deal, and he was a host of a talk show. And I sat in the audience of the talk show, and afterwards I said to him, how do I make it as an actor in LA? I was 19. And he said, well, you got to be a little bit talented. Just a little bit. You don't have to be super talented, but you have to be kind. Be kind to people. They'll remember you. And don't quit. And if all those three things happen, you'll work. That is good advice for anyone in any industry.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? He didn't say, oh, take all your fears and focus on being scared all the time and then just work on fear. He didn't say any of that stuff, right? And of course we can learn from our fear, but if you just ask yourself, what am I actually afraid of? When you root it down, right? What am I actually afraid of? Well, I'm afraid that they're not going to pick me. Well, why does that matter? Well, if they don't pick me, then I have to look for another job, right? Or I have to look for another partner. Well, then what? Why does that matter? Well, it's more work. Well, why does that matter? Because I'm tired. Well, why does that matter? Because I just want to be happy. Well, why does that matter? Because I just want to be loved and I just want to love someone, right? That was just a quick example. But when you truly ask yourself any question, why do I want something? Why am I afraid of something? Or why do I feel imposter syndrome about this? Root it down. What does that really mean? Why does that matter? It always comes back to love, Kendall. We just want to love and be loved. We're all crying out for love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I think, there's so much things in this world. So much of what we fear today is so untangible. You talk about the wildfires, that's something very real, very present. But talking about social media, we can get into not get into specifics, but just like politics, Trump just got elected and there's a lot of people who are really fearful. And, maybe some of these things that they're fearful maybe come true. But I'm sure that not everything they're fearful of are going to come true. And it almost feels like every election, half the people on one side are really fearful and half the others are like, oh, everything's fine. And so, I'm like, it's more nuanced than that. There's, and just everything, the news or social media, there's all these fears we have that we really, like you said, examine the stories and what's behind this, what's behind this, what's behind this. And we realize so much of our fears is about things that haven't come true or probably aren't going to come true. And again, it's all about love. And then we realize that, of course, we're social creatures. We need relationship. We need love externally, but a lot of it too is just we can give ourselves so much love and we can meet so much of our needs from inside of us. And so we're looking for answers externally when it's inside of us. And so the answer to this fear is inside of us. We have that power.
Yeah, it's true. And then people go, okay, well, it's inside of me. What do I do with it? Right. So it's important to inquire, whether you inquire on your own and you journal or you meditate, or you inquire with a coach or a therapist or a friend who is loving and supportive. You can ask yourself, well, what's the belief underneath this fear? Where did I learn this belief? Who taught me this?
Mm-hmm.
And is it actually mine? Right? Because sometimes fear is inherited, like things that your parents taught us, or a teacher, or a pastor, or a previous version of yourself. You created this rule, like, this is dangerous. You can't do this. Something bad's going to happen. And maybe that was true then, but is it true now?
Yeah. Yeah. I really like parts work and examining, where is this, like you said, bringing the unconscious conscious, what is this limiting belief? And then where did that come from? And what part of me is like holding on to not wanting to change, or, oh, I can't do this. And a lot of it is this beliefs that other people have instilled in us. And there's this younger version of me that's scared, that wants to stay safe, that is holding me back. And and if we can have a good relationship and not be like, oh, well, I hate you or you're wrong or whatever, but how can we lovingly talk to this part and help it understand that we can stay safe, we can continue to grow, and it will be a little scary, but it'll be worth it, and we can form new patterns.
Mm-hmm. Similar to what you said about, it might have been before we were recording, starting this podcast, right? Like, what will people who know me before this think about all the things that I'm talking about now and learning now and embracing now, right? And that's a really common fear for people. And I coach a lot of entrepreneurs in my coaching membership. And that's one of the big things that comes up over and over and over. It's like, well, I had this degree in this, or I have this career in this, or everybody knows me as this, but what I really want to do is this, and everyone's going to judge me, and people are going to question me, and people in my family are going to be scared that I'm starting over at this point in my life, and is that a reason to not go for it? Is that a reason to keep doing something you don't love, that you feel like you're not expressed, where you're, living in a zone that's not your zone of genius? And some people truly don't go for it and play small because they don't want other people to feel uncomfortable. So they think they're doing this act of generosity, right? But really, they're not being their true selves. And, I coach a lot of coaches, and people start to roll their eyes and be like, well, isn't everybody a coach nowadays? It's like, well, I don't think so. But the ones that I know are wonderful. And thank God they're coaching, because people need help. Like more and more people
Mm-hmm.
need help. So I wouldn't tell you not to write a book, because there's so many books out there. Like,
Right.
we should not be making assumptions about our dreams. There's enough people to help. There's enough people to entertain, to serve, to heal, to play with, to connect with. Like, if you have a dream inside your heart, it's there for a reason, right? So go for it in whatever way you can, in the capacity that you can. I'm not saying like, hey, everybody quit their job. Although I love when people do, but if you have to do it right, you have to do it,
Mm-hmm.
or
Right.
you're not going to, not have enough to eat or whatnot. But go for it. Build the thing you want to build while still sustaining this other thing. But stop telling yourself an old story that is facilitating other people's comfort when you are
Mm-hmm.
just having discomfort, when you're uncomfortable
Mm-hmm.
with your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that staying small for other people, that's something that a lot of us were taught growing up, to stay safe, and that's a story we have to retell. And I think it's okay to be big. And then also, when we don't listen to the call of what our soul passion is and what is calling us to, that creates a lot of suffering inside of us. And then we're also not growing the fruits of the gifts that's been placed inside of us. And so it's not only hurting ourselves, but it's hurting other people by us not being fully ourselves, and that transforms and helps others and inspires others to do the same.
Right? Like, it's not fair of us to deprive other people of the gifts that we have to share. So, when that fear is really loud, it doesn't mean it's the truth.
Yeah.
Right? You
Yeah.
mentioned politics briefly. Just because something is really loud doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So it's like, okay, well, our brain is like, hey, you might fail, but our soul and our heart is over here whispering, what if you succeed? Right? When fear says you're not ready, right? Remind yourself, no one ever feels fully ready.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? They don't, like, never, they just never feel ready. And that's true about anything, even if a musician is putting out an album, like, you can edit it, you can tweak it, you can fine tune it to death. Just put it out, just let it be ready. And same thing for yourself. If you're like, well, it's really scary to put something out, I don't know if it feels ready. Okay, well, remind yourself, I've done hard things before. I can do this too. We have to rewrite that script in our brain in order to rewire those patterns, right? So the more that you do that, the more love is put into the driver's seat, not fear. You want to reduce the power that fear has. And that's how we can remain calm and peaceful, which is when you go back down, why does this matter? Why does this matter? What are you doing this for? We just want to feel loved. We just want to feel peace. Like, right? Like what you said before about your hands were shaking. Like, when we're not
Mm-hmm.
feeling that peace, when we're not breathing, just everything suffers.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think talking about love, switching from, I need to reach this external place that I have imagined in my head for me to feel peace and love. It's like, how can I shift that to seeing myself on this journey and seeing the steps I'm trying to make? And, maybe they're not to that standard, but if I'm making the effort, how can I give myself love for that and just appreciate the process? And through doing that, then comes peace, and which helps release a lot of blocks and resistance to momentum in making that journey.
Mm-hmm. We have to celebrate those little milestones and those small wins. Every week my clients tell me what's working. I say, celebrate your wins. What's going well? What's working? If I ask anyone at any point what sucks in their life and what's hard, they're going to have 100 answers. There's no hesitation. They know exactly what's on their shit list, right? But like, what's working, it's okay if it takes a minute to think about that. And it's truly a gratitude practice to celebrate, you know what, this is working. This is going well. And if you do more of that, the stuff that's not working is not put in the forefront. It's not in the driver's seat and you don't notice it anymore.
Yeah, I love that.
It's shifting your focus from fear to creation. Right? Because fear is reactive. Like it just keeps looking at what's going wrong. Creation shifts your energy into what's possible. So instead of saying, well, how do I get rid of all this fear? Ask yourself, well, what do I want to create instead? Isn't that a great question? What do I want to create?
Yeah.
I'll create it.
Yes, 100%. I think it also gets you stuck from, regret from the past, or to, like you said, the fear of the future, into what it heals your relationship with the past and the future. What have I done right in the past, or what's the steps I've taken, and then what am I excited about creating in the future. And doing that helps you stay in the now, get you in the now of what's next, what am I doing now, what do I want to do.
And in all fairness, if someone is dealing with serious depression or anxiety, if I say to them, hey, focus on what lights you up, they're gonna be like, fuck you, right? Like right. Lights me up right now. So I get that, and I've been there, and I'll be there again in the future. I'm human. We're all human. So instead of replaying those worst case scenarios over and over, if I said to you, well, focus on what lights you up, and you're like, nothing lights me up. Okay, well, what you've been doing is you're just focusing on the bad shit. Can we just consider focusing on the best case scenarios? Right? Because remember, fear and excitement can't exist at the same time. So if you move towards creating in your mind, well, what is the best case scenario? Then fear will have less control over you. You've taken that power back. It's little teeny tiny, just small, bold actions. Because fear will dissolve with action. It's when we're sitting around doing nothing all the time, like soaking in the monster of depression, that the fear just keeps building because we're inactive. When we take those little tiny steps, right? How can I reclaim my power today? How can I show myself I'm bigger than this fear? That little bit every single day makes you better, like learning guitar or, learning anything, just that little bit every day. And when we're in the muck, when we're in the darkness, like we don't even want to do that first teeny tiny step. But I promise you will get sick of your sad, horrible thoughts, and you will want to have a better thought, a brighter, happier thought. Your spirit is going to shine through. If it needs to yell, it'll yell, but it will shine through and say, what if you just got off the couch? What if you just sent one more email? What if you just called someone and said hi, right? It's just that little bit we start to change.
Yeah. A lot of times people will suffer until they reach a kind of breaking point, and then they have to do something, and then they make the change. But, my journey myself is to learn how to not reach that breaking point, and how can I take power myself over time and make those small steps before I get to this breaking point. There's such negativity and such being so down that it forces me into positive reinforcement, positive inward momentum and energy to make that change slowly in small steps. I think that's a big part too, is being a dreamer is beautiful in the sense of imagining what could be, but also then learning to be more practical, and how can we take small steps so we know how we can make it work in reality, and we get there over time in small ways, instead of like, I have to be there now and it has to be huge or I give up.
Yeah, then you're skipping the journey, right?
Yes.
We're so impatient as a culture. Like, we just want to get there. We just want to feel better. Most people would rather take the pill than do the work. And I get it. Life is hard. It's just the truth. But we're here for the fast track. We really are. That's why we chose this life, this body, this experience. And if you don't believe that, if you don't believe you chose that, that's okay. But you can acknowledge, well, this is kind of a tough place to be, this human experience.
Mm-hmm.
It is. And we are better because of it. And like you said, those little steps, maybe it's just asking for help. Maybe it's speaking up. Maybe it's listening to shows like this, right? Working with coaches like us. Maybe it's saying yes to something that stretches you. You're already uncomfortable. Like, I don't want to work with a coach. I don't want to be uncomfortable. You're already uncomfortable, right? So like stretch it out. Like, stop believing these old stories, and whatever it is, just do something that tells your fear, I'm in charge now.
Yeah. I love that you talked about how, you're gonna suffer either way, suffer quotes, but you're gonna suffer if you do nothing, if you stay where you're at in stagnation. And so do you want that suffering, or do you want the suffering, quotes again, that requires growth and change, but ultimately will light you up and have so much more reward and positivity and benefits for yourself and for everyone?
Mm-hmm. And if you're looking at comparing the two, suffering, we'll just call it, sinking into the couch suffering. You could do that the rest of your life. And it's just going to feel like
go back.
You can always go back, right? It's low grade pain. You can have the rest of your life, or you could rip the Band-Aid off and just suffer in a fun, new, discomforting way. And it starts to feel better. And then it starts to feel better. And it just converts into change, and then eventually peace. And there's an acceptance that happens that then connects to excitement. The acceptance is, I'm choosing this or not. I really have a choice here or not. And again, just giving light and respect to true clinical depression. I wouldn't tell someone, who is truly clinically depressed, like, hey, you're just choosing this, so get over it. That's not at all what I'm saying. I think in conjunction with therapy and medication and anything else. But remember, it's a choice to go to therapy, or it's a choice to take medication or herbs, or start exercising and going out and doing all the things that we know help to defeat depression. But you have to make that first choice. And it can feel really hard. It could feel really heavy to make that first choice. But I promise you, if you're quiet enough and you're listening and you breathe, there is a voice inside of you encouraging you and cheering you on, who loves you and believes in you. And it is your higher self, really. Like, you are perfect love, and you forgot that. And this heavy human cloak that you're wearing isn't real. So how much has it been serving you to believe in that reality?
Yeah, I think that voice of fear is, I can't. And it's just, you see like black in the future. That was me growing up. When I saw myself as an adult, I just saw black. I couldn't imagine me doing well. And so I think that's what the power of therapy and coaching is, someone else there to help jumpstart us, someone that believes in us, that listens, that is holding that love for us. And what now? What can you do? And, therapy really is focused on helping people get to baseline. And then coaching, I love so much because there's so much questions, which helps open up people to their creativity, their imagination. Or what if I could make this choice? Or what if I could do this? What if I could shift my beliefs? And so it helps them learn to, connect with spirit and listen to that, and imagination, and for momentum. And so I think that, I've benefited from therapy and coaching. And obviously as a coach myself, I just realize how powerful that is. And also bringing the unconscious to the conscious, be like, what's going on? What are these limiting beliefs? And so much of that, before we analyze it, is in the unconscious, and having someone else can see what we might not can see, and so help us realize what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those questions are so powerful. And sometimes we don't know the questions to ask ourselves. And when I was going to college for psychology, people in class were like, oh, do you want to be a therapist? I'm like, I just want to learn about the human mind. Like, I don't know what I
Mm-hmm.
want to be. I want to be an actor, but I don't think I'm going to be a therapist. And then when I decided I wanted to be a coach, I asked myself again that same question. Well, do I want to finish my degree? Do I want to be a therapist or a coach? And I know from going to therapy and having friends who are therapists, a therapist's job, and it's a beautiful job, is to help you reflect on your journey, right? So they get to say things like, well, here's what I'm hearing, or here's what you just said. So you can hear yourself back and then make a better
Mm-hmm.
choice. And a therapist will ask you really powerful questions. Well, how does that feel? What do you want? Where a coach, and this is why I chose coaching, gets to tell you what to do sometimes. And I'm not blanketing that all coaches do that, but as an intuitive, if you're coming to me and you're like, Elysia, what do I do? I will work with you in a therapeutic format because I want you to figure it out yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? If it has been hours or days or weeks and you haven't got there and you just want me to tell you what I think is best based on my years of experience working with so many people, as a coach, I get to. And you get to
Mm-hmm.
choose to filter that through your own intuition and your own energy and make a choice on if that feels right for you or not. And I might tell you what to do and you might say, that's not it, but this is it. And then we got there together. But ultimately, you're the
Mm-hmm.
one making the choice.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it too. And I think that just as they're learning and growing so much, we as a coach are also learning and growing so much through our empower. I think maybe the course says this somewhere about like there's another level of learning being in the role of the teacher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the manual for teachers for sure. Um, I learn so much from my clients all the time, and my program is currently set up. I do take one-on-one clients, but my main program, it's called the Emerald Collective, focusing on the heart chakra, and it's a business coaching program. But not everyone asks business questions. A lot of times they're talking about relationships. But the way it's set up is we're in a mastermind. We meet once a week on Zoom, and I will often call on my other clients to assist me in answering questions because they have more experience in that specific thing, right? I don't claim
Mm-hmm.
to be
Mm-hmm.
anyone's guru or to know everything about everything. Like, no way. I love aligning with other experts, other brilliant people, other people who have specialties and niches, and the thing that where they are truly a genius. And I think we have to have more than one teacher. And as you said, as coaches and teachers, we become better when we surround ourselves with other
Mm-hmm.
teachers, other masters. We're lifelong learners. That's what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. If we stop learning, we stop growing. And there's always more to learn. And that's part of the beauty and enjoyment of life. So if we can get in that mindset, it'll take us a long way.
Mm-hmm. It's like water, right? If water stays
Mm-hmm.
stagnant, it gets gross, right? And then eventually
Mm-hmm.
evaporates. We
Mm-hmm.
cannot stay stagnant. And, with that, bringing it back to fear, like I said earlier, fear is not an enemy. It's just a messenger. It's just asking you to look at something, to heal something, and to step into a bigger, more powerful version of yourself. And you don't have to completely get rid of fear in order to move forward. You just have to stop letting it be the one that makes the decisions.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think that, some people think of courage as moving without fear, but no, it's moving despite having fear. And I think it's a huge, huge shift.
Yep. And with each small act of courage, you rewire your mind, you shift your patterns, you reclaim your power.
Oh, I can do this. Oh, I can do this. I can do this. And you realize you can do more and more and more, and then you develop a bigger and bigger capacity.
Mm-hmm. And you also don't take it for granted that, oh, I could do this, I could do this. You've already done so many of those things before.
Mm.
And now you get to do
Mm-hmm.
them with this knowledge and this wisdom, with knowing yourself better. Every time we
Mm.
do the shadow work, we go through the dark shit, we come up, we emerge up, knowing ourselves better. You've faced uncertainty. And you've created even when fear was whispering in your ear. So you are proving to yourself over and over and over that you're capable. So now it's just remembering, right? What's one small thing you can do today to remind yourself of your power? It's a big question.
Yeah. I love that. And I think talking about the river and staying stagnant, I think a big part of the continuing to move forward is talking about that self-compassion, because we're gonna fail sometimes, we're gonna go backwards sometimes, we're going to move slower than we want to, but that compassion is so big, and yeah, it's just a part of loving ourselves and appreciating the journey no matter what it looks like, despite our expectations. And that's the thing that helps us continue to move forward despite whatever pops up.
Mm-hmm. It does. And so Kristen Neff is the psychologist, I believe, who, I don't know if she coined the term self-compassion, but she really did a deep study on it. She's written books on it. She has a TED Talk on it. And there's a lot of elements to it. And I don't claim to remember all of them, but I know one of them is self-kindness. Like if we could just be kinder to ourselves. Oh my gosh, right? We tell ourselves the worst stories about ourselves. We would never tell our children or our friends the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, right? It's like we encourage each other. Let's encourage ourselves more. And again, your brain is following what you're saying, doing, thinking, right? Like we are in charge constantly of rewiring our brain and changing those synapses, or they're going to fire. So what are we doing, right? Like just kindness, like please be kind to yourself. My friend Andrea does this thing, and now there's a bunch of us that do it, where if we make a mistake, which we all do, instead of saying, oh my God, I'm so stupid, or, I really fucked that up, right? Like whatever it is we might have said, now we just go, I'm so pretty. And it makes everyone laugh, and it makes us laugh. And now I do it even when I'm by myself. I'm like, I'm so pretty. I forgot to take the mail out of the mailbox for like 5 days, and it rained, and now it's all stuck together and wet. I am so pretty. I'm going to have to like manually look at my bills, right? Great. And then you just make it playful. Like stop beating yourself up for the mistakes that you've made. I'm not saying ignore them, learn from them, course correct, accept them, apologize when you need to apologize. But there's a time and a place to bring in the I'm so pretty, because most of what we beat ourselves up about is not that big of a deal, right? And maybe, some men who are listening might not resonate with I'm so pretty. So we can, Kendall, what should they replace it with? I'm so cool.
I'm so cool. I'm so brave. I'm such a man. I don't know.
I'm such a dude. I totally did this thing, right?
Such a dude. Yeah. Yeah. Like that. Yeah. To me, it makes it playful. And, like what does beating ourselves do? It just gets us trapped in that fear and that shame, and then creates stuckness instead of, okay, let me acknowledge what I did. Oops, I made a mistake. How can I, what can I do now? How can I be in the moment? What can I do on the situation instead of staying stuck in the past of I made this mistake and now we're just stuck, and so like, okay, it is what it is. Accept reality. It's okay. What can I do now?
What can I do now? There's, I want to read it correctly. There's a quote on the front of my own website that I wrote. I wrote, the word currency comes from the word current, because a lot of people work with me for money, right? Meaning they want to make more money, or they want to build their business or expand their business. To stay present, healthy, and impactful, we must embrace the constant changes in our environment and experiences. Resistance to change leads to stagnation. Right? It stops the flow. It stops the current. Change is inevitable. When you look at Darwin and what he talked about, it's the reason there is evolution, whether or not you believe in, Darwin's theory of evolution. it is true that resistance to change is what keeps us stuck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of talking about current and currency. I just listened to a talk by the spiritual teacher named Kyle Cease. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, and he has a thing called the illusion of money, and he talks about how we are the energy, we are the currency, we are the creators that has the resources that then brings in the money. And so instead of thinking about, oh, how can I make money, or I don't have money, or it's like, no, you are the bringer of it. You're the one, the creator. What is your skills? What do you have inside of you? Again, changing that fear to creation, creativity. What's inside of me that has the resources that brings in that, and how can I utilize that?
Whew. I'm going to look that up. I'm
Yeah.
going to listen to that talk. For everyone listening now, if you want to go deeper also into the story of money, there's 2 episodes on my podcast. One is a solo episode that I did called My Wealth Comes from Love, and I'll talk about that in a second. And then I interviewed a guy named Stephen M. Hughes, who's a financial therapist and Reiki master. And we had a lot of deep conversations around the energy of money. So I encourage everyone to go check that out. And Kendall, I think you'll like those 2 episodes a lot.
Yeah, sounds amazing. Well. Sounds a lot aligned.
Yeah, right. We're just working through it. And so when I had this epiphany that my wealth comes from love, it goes back to some stories I told myself as a kid, because my mother died when I was 12 years old. She was hit by a car and killed. And we received a life insurance settlement. It wasn't very much. I think it might have only been around like $150,000 or something. But for a young kid, that was a lot of money. But I resented it. And I don't know if that was the amount that I got, or my sister and I both got that same amount. I don't even know. But I wasn't in control of any of the money back then. But, you know, I remember I had some money set aside. And when I moved to Los Angeles a few years later, my sister and I sold the house that my mother left us. And I took the rest of that money and I bought a condo. And I had this story in my head that this was like blood money. Like I loved my condo and I was very grateful to not be paying rent. And now I'm paying a mortgage and I'm building, you know, assets and all that stuff. But I just kept calling it blood money. And then my grandmother had passed away and she left me a small inheritance. I was like, oh my gosh, like, how can I not just spend all this money? Because all the money my mother left me, it's gone. I spent it. And I realized I had a habit or a pattern of spending money as quickly as I earned it. I didn't let it sit in my bank account because I just thought it all came from pain. And I rationalized it so deep down that even my hard-earned money that I made working with all of my skills all somehow connected to, well, maybe I wouldn't have had those opportunities had my mother not died, and da-da-da. And I told myself all these crazy stories. And ultimately, I was working with a coach named Patsy Askew in Australia. And she said, Elysia, didn't your mother set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to her? I was like, yeah. She said, well, why'd she do that? Because she loves me. Okay, so if you were able to buy your condo, which then you eventually sold and bought a house, which you eventually sold and bought a house and an investment property, where did all that wealth come from? It comes from love. I'm just crying, right? My wealth comes from love. And then talking about A Course in Miracles and some of what we talked about in the beginning of this episode, right? We are love. Right? We're not fear. We are love. We're perfect love. We are made of love. We are not separate from love. So if my wealth comes from love and everything that I am and everything that is within me, I'm doing this with my hands. It's like an infinity loop, right? Like we are love. So everything I create in my life comes from love, including money, including the amount of money I have in the bank. It comes from love. So every day I have an alert that goes off on my phone and it says, in what ways today can I build my wealth from love?
Yeah, I love that. And I think that early on I had trouble with the idea of having a lot of money. And I don't have a lot of money right now, but just the idea of it. And I realized if I have a lot of money, then I can create more opportunities for myself to grow, and I can also help other people, and I can use it in a loving way instead of this, materialist greed. What can I have? What can I get? In this lack and fear way, I can use it in a loving way. So I'm like, okay, I wouldn't mind if I had a lot of money. And I'm okay with not having a lot of money. That's fine. But now I broke that belief of having a lot of money is wrong.
Good. Because when kind people have wealth, the world is a better place. Right? There's a lot of billionaires in charge right now, and they're making a lot of policies that a lot of us are really unhappy with, that are unsettling. Mm-hmm. So how about folks like you and I become billionaires? Like, would we be billionaires for very long? Probably not. We'd give most of it away. But I'll get to that status point. I had someone say to me, and I'm very liberal. I lean very liberal, and I believe in human rights and all the things, the environment and education and whatnot. So I'll say that with a disclaimer that a friend of mine who is like really, really, really liberal said, or just very, 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 very left, mm-hmm. Nobody should be a billionaire. Nobody should have that much money. I was like, I hear you, mm-hmm. but people do. So if they do, we should too. Right? Like, mm-hmm. why are they playing chess and we're playing checkers? Like, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. let's have our kings and queens in the game so that we can truly make a difference. So I encourage as many spiritually driven, kindness motivated people out there. Build your wealth. You deserve it. You deserve to make money. And there's a stigma, and it might be past life stuff. It could be ancestral lineage that, when you give, when you're truly a teacher or a guide, going back to nuns and priests, right? They don't quote unquote make money. They just give. Healers should just heal. Okay. And they deserve to have a nice life too. And they deserve to be able to give back and contribute. And I have seen it. I've witnessed it over and over and over. The spiritual practitioners that I know, the healers, the mystics, the Reiki workers, all of them who just give it all away for free all the time, they're suffering because they're so stressed out. They can't pay their bills.
It's a martyrdom complex.
It's right. It is a martyrdom complex. And it's also, again, I think it's lineage. Well, I'm supposed to give it for free. Mm-hmm. Not in this society, honey. Like, that's just not how it is anymore. And, I have programs that I run where I charge a really nice premium, and I have very inexpensive offers as well. There is something out there for everyone. And my podcast is free, and your podcast is free. This is beautiful coaching and help and healing we're giving to people for free. We are giving back. So if you're listening and you need to charge more or increase your prices, do it. Do it. Okay. Because when you make more money, that's another opportunity where you can scholarship people who can't afford it, but you can't scholarship everybody. You got to pay your bills, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We get to actually give more when we make more.
Yeah. When we can take care of what we need to for ourselves, then we can then take care of other people more and help them more, and also be in a healthy place to, show up and be present for other people.
Mm-hmm. There it is. Right. So if you're an entrepreneur listening, give yourself a raise today.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Another thing what you're talking about is like the world we live in today. In the past, I've thought about it before, like, coaches or therapists, and, maybe they were the, shamans or the priests or whatever. But it's just different today, the way we live. And so maybe they could be supported by the community, but the way we work today is not that. And so money is what helps support us. And so there's nothing wrong with being like, this is the way it works now. And so we can adapt to the system, but make the best of the system and do it ethically in the right way. But you can't totally separate from the system. And, I think that's kind of bypassing in a way. And so learning to, as Christianity says, live in the world, but not of the world.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Because here's the deal. There is somebody less talented and less compassionate than you charging more. There just is. So you can charge your worth. You can raise your prices. You can ask for more. And it's okay, and it'll be okay. And you are
Mm-hmm.
worthy and
And
deserving.
like you said, you have offers for people in different, what they can afford. And so you have ways to reach everyone where they're at. And I think that's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, it's fun. It just makes it fun. I don't like saying no to people.
Yeah.
We can talk about where does that come from. That's a whole nother episode.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, this has been great. Is there anything else that's on your mind that you want to add?
Well, I guess as we're signing off, I really want to encourage people to listen to this conversation more than once, because we really went deep today. And that's one of the things that I love about you, Kendall, and the conversations you have. We go deep and we covered a lot, and there's so many layers within each thing. And I try not to just teach cliff notes, and I try not to be surface. It just depends on how much time we have to get into something.
Mm-hmm.
So listen to this more than once and take notes and reach out to us and ask us, like, what does this mean? And ask for help and look at what we've got going on and just get involved, get involved in your community, reach out to be supportive of other people. I think the last thing I want to say that really helps people work through fear and become kinder to themselves too. And this, again, all connects to the energy of money. The final thing we wound up talking about today is to be generous. And I don't want to misconstrue that, because I just said, hey, don't give it all away for free all the time. Mm-hmm. But if you don't volunteer, find an opportunity once a month to volunteer. If you don't ever let anybody in on a scholarship, let one person in for a brief period of time and set up really clear boundaries. If you haven't called someone in your family recently, that you just want to say hi and send them love, and just look someone in the eye and ask them, how are you? Or ask a stranger, how are you? And pause for a couple minutes to just connect. Please do that. These are all acts of generosity, and it just takes a little bit of your time, but it will help you feel better. And we don't do it to feel better. We don't do it to create any karma or undo any karma. There's no purpose other than just share, just be kind, and be as generous as you can be without it really hurting you or anyone else. We teach people how to treat us, right? So if we're constantly giving away for free, doing everything for free, letting everyone in for free, helping everyone all the time, then they expect it. So do it at your own pace in a way that really lights up your heart and will be supportive to others.
Yeah, I love that. Be generous and help other people, but have boundaries and be healthy and not let people walk all over you. So appreciate your generosity and do it in a way that other people appreciate that as well. And yeah, just help others. It's great.
Yeah, feels good. Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. I really enjoyed it. Really, like you said, got in deep, which we both love. And so it was a great conversation. I love your energy, your positivity and enthusiasm.
Thank you. I hope to be back, and I hope you'll be on my show one day too.
Yeah, that'd be great. Awesome.
Thank you. And to everyone listening, check out ElysiaSky.com, ElysiaSkye.com. That's where all my magic is. That's my social media handle and everything. Reach out, connect. I don't have an AI assistant. If you get a reply, it's actually me. If you're listening to this 5 years in the future, I can't say that is still true, but who knows? I'm open to everything, attached to nothing. Something greater.
Yeah. I'll make sure I have your website in the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you again, Kendall.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks.
You're welcome.